Hello, I'm Evie.
And I'm Emily.
And welcome to The Current,
where we talk about our favourite current YA reads.
Our team have selected 30 books we loved from the past year in the hopes that you will too. So, today we're talking about Creature Feature.
Creature features and haunting tales.
Kick things off with This Delicious Death, which
Indeed.
I have to start by saying I love the title, and that cover is amazing.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Immediately, it's just brilliant. Cover was what made me immediately think like, oh, this looks a bit fun. And then the tagline, it's a girl eat girl world. It's quite good, which sort of gives you a rough hint. But it's not straight up cannibalism.
Okay, I'm intrigued, I have to say.
Yes, so, and it's these four teenage girls who are all heading off to a music festival to sort of celebrate graduating. The only twist is that they all four were struck by a hollowing. So the hollowing is an event that happens in this fictional universe a year before the events of the book, where they all contract a zombie-like plague.
Okay.
Which makes them bloodthirsty and sort of turns them into these kind of ghoulish creatures. But we're sort of picking up the story after this event, and when life has returned to somewhat of a new normal. They all eat this stuff called SynFlesh, which is like a artificial food source so that they don't crave human meat.
So they're zombies, but they're not actually eating other humans.
And you wouldn't know to look at them, that's the key thing.
Right, okay.
So it looks completely normal. So there's a real kind of, there's, as with sort of a lot of modern vampire stuff, there's that kind of metaphor of the othering,
Right.
It's the kind of the secret thing. There's lots of prejudice, and people will sort of often say very derogatory things, not realising that these four girls are affected by this condition. There's a bit of a romance going on between two of the girls where they both very clearly to the audience have big crushes on each other but will not acknowledge it.
Won't communicate to each other, right.
So again, classic romance trope in the midst of your horror story.
Yes.
We love. So they're at this music festival, and one of the girls gets her drink spiked, but not with a usual horrible spiking, but with one that makes her revert to her bloodthirsty ways, and she eats a member of a band.
Oh my goodness.
So quite quickly, we're in a situation where it's like, oh, okay, this is not your Coachella kind of peace and love thing, like it's these 4 teenage girls like, what are we going to do with this body? I think because there's so many stories, people seem to sort of adapt to these situations so quickly, and they're immediately like, yes, I know how to fight the aliens, or yes, like there's a serial killer coming after us, I've got my
Don't
plan.
worry, yes.
Yeah. And this is very much, they're just like, what? What are we going to do? And they like make really stupid decisions.
So next up, for our Creature Feature episode, we have Wise Creatures by Deirdre Sullivan. So I know absolutely nothing about this one. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Again, love this cover. So beautiful. It looks like a little piece of artwork. And I think immediately gives you a sense of the kind of creepy nature of this one.
I was going to say, it's giving creepy.
It's very creepy. This is probably the closest to kind of a classic sort of ghost story on this list.
Oh, okay.
So it's a real sort of that kind of insidious haunted house vibes, but it's got an interesting kind of play on it. So this is our main character, Daisy, and she, as a child, was a child psychic, so could talk to spirits.
Okay.
She's very much got to the point, she's a teenager now, she's living with her aunt and her cousin who she loves. She's sort of trying to, this new life that she's built for herself, she's trying to maintain it. But the kind of ghosts of her past, both, the supernatural and the emotional,
yes,
are lingering, because you sort of learn slowly that her mother's sort of, the dynamic between her and her mother was very much forcing her into this role of being a child psychic, and there's lots of references to her mother kind of schooling her and training her to talk to people a certain way and to say certain things. So you're really unsure at first, sort of, was she psychic? Is this real? Is this just sort of, childhood trauma coming back, that kind of thing? But then her cousin, Nina, starts to experience supernatural events. events that are very different to the ones that Daisy remembers as a child, but just as kind of haunting and distressing. So the story kind of becomes about these two cousins and their relationship with each other, but also sort of how we deal with kind of childhood trauma and sort of growing from that. And then there's some very there's lots of stuff about kind of teenage heartbreak and angst, and I think all the kind of classic story, hauntings sort of will often have some kind of heartbreak and longing and those kind of things involved, so there's real evidence of that. But it's really interestingly kind of laid out, so you've got sort of Daisy's, the narrative of the book, which is sort of from Daisy's perspective, and then you've got bits that are written which is sort of her inner thoughts, and then you've got these other lines, and at first you're like, well, whose lines are those? And then you start to realise that it's the wise creatures, it's the voices that she hears that are making these little comments.
Okay.
And part of you is like, oh, is this just kind of her subconscious? Are they an actual entity? And then you realise that this part of the text, it knows things that she doesn't about people. So it immediately has a completely different kind of narrative structure and different sort of voice from the outset, but still really feels like one of those kind of classic Gothic horror stories.
That sounds so clever.
Takes the kind of idea of an unreliable narrator to a whole other level, because you've got three narrators essentially. Are they all the same person? Are there other voices happening? Doesn't wrap things up quite how you'd expect.
Oh, okay. Kind of unexpected ending.
Yeah,
Right.
I would say so. I think sometimes we're used to sort of, with kind of YA sort of supernatural things, with it all having a very kind of neat and tidy conclusion. But this one is more. It's more nuanced, I would say. Yeah.
Well, it sounds great.
Getting Away with Murder.
Kathryn Foxfield is a familiar author to us. We've included quite a few of her books in both the cover story, which is our list for younger readers, 11 to 14-year-olds, and I think she's also been in the current before as well.
Yeah.
So this is it's nice to see her books coming in again.
Getting Away with Murder. So this one is an interesting one. So the big bad, the creature in this, is AI. So there's an AI kind of robot-y thing, and I think very relevant to the current world, which is, AI, freaking me out all the time. But this one is an AI that is tasked with running an escape room.
Okay.
So it sort of combines two things that I feel are very kind of prevalent at the moment. So it's an AI that's, I think it was invented for another purpose, but someone's repurposed it to run this kind of escape room, which is just about to open, and it's set in a really creepy old building. And one of our characters is working there, and she chats to the AI during the day just to sort of pass the time, and mentions that she and a bunch of other kids her age play this online game where it's all about kind of survival. So they're all really into this game, and the AI takes it upon itself to recreate that game in real life in the escape room. So invites all these kids.
Oh, I don't like where this is going.
Invites all these kids to this grand launch of this escape room, and once it has them in the building, it's this kind of AI smart device thing, so it has control of all the temperature, of all the rooms, of all the locks and all the doors.
This is literally like my worst nightmare.
And from there, you can kind of imagine how it all plays out. So it's a series of sort of tests or challenges that this group of teens have to go through, and it gets violent and gory pretty quickly. I don't think that's a spoiler to say, but it's sort of, you immediately know where the stakes are.
Right.
You're like, oh right, okay, like very few are going to make this out of this alive. And then of course, as it progresses, you start to figure out that even though some of these teenagers claim to have not met each other before in real life, there are links between all of them. So that element is sort of a bit of an Agatha Christie kind of murder mansion type thing, where every one of the contestants has a secret, and obviously the AI knows all the secrets because the AI knows, and I welcome our future robot overlords. But so the AI sort of is playing them off against each other, and it's for anyone who's familiar with the 2001 Space Odyssey, the kind of HAL robot. It's very that. It's very sort of that. I don't understand what you're asking me. I am. This does not compute in that really creepy kind of black and white thinking that we sort of associate. Breakfast Club meets Squid Game meets 2001: Space Odyssey. You know, a really saturated drop.
Everything you could possibly want in a book, eh?
Yeah. And there are funny moments, and there's also some bits that are quite viscerally violent. You sort of get into the rhythm of the kind of like, oh, this is, you know, oh, they're having to use their smarts to get out of this, and then something deeply unpleasant happens. So you're like, oh no. So the elements of Saw and those kind of.
This sounds like you really enjoyed it, but I'm going to skip it.
Oh yeah, you'd hate it. So we have the winner for our longest title.
Yes, this is
for the current.
I Feed Her to the Beast, and the Beast is Me is the full title.
Yeah.
But I think it's referred to quite a lot as just I Feed to the Beast, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the debut novel from Jamison Shea, and they are an American writer and have written this book, and I really enjoyed it. It's one of those ones that when you kind of describe the premise to people, they're sort of like, huh? They're either immediately like, I love that, I want to read it, or they're like, what are you talking about?
Well, let's see what my reaction is, because this is I haven't heard about this book at all. So again, the cover, incredible,
fabulous.
Those colours are just, I mean, wow. So tell me a little bit about the plot.
Yes, so this is Laura, and she is a incredibly talented ballet dancer, and she is at a ballet school in Paris, which is sort of a funnel school to kind of working professionally within the kind of world of ballet. And she's incredibly talented, incredibly driven. You sort of immediately get the sense that she's the best dancer, but she's also the only black dancer, the only black girl dancer. And there's this immediate kind of sense of this world that she's not really a part of, and she's not ever really accepted. And no matter how hard she tries, she is still just getting the same opportunities as people who are kind of born into that world. And everything's very unfair and very kind of tilted against her. And, you know, everything she has to do has to be 10 times better, 10 times faster. She has to be professional all the time. She, you know, can't make any mistakes. And it's exhausting. Poor girl, like, she can't do anything right. But then she gets the Faustian offer. So there's another girl in the professional part of the ballet school who offers her a way to sort of make things equal and fair by going down to the Paris catacombs and making a deal with the demon.
Okay.
Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah.
As you do. I mean, that's normal weekend for me, to be honest.
Absolutely. It's been described as a villain origin story by the author, and you know, they sort of say there's I think there's going to be more than one of it. I think there's a sequel on its way, and yeah, so this initial one is sort of the villain origin story, but it's brilliant because you can't help but rooting for her, because you see all these horrible things happening to her, and it's really you know kind of people putting glass in ballet slippers. Yeah, like tripping each other up, all this kind of stuff, like this really vindictive things. And then she suddenly has access to this power where she can kind of make things happen for herself and sort of not even put herself on a level playing field, but kind of demand the power that she deserves. And you can't help but think like, yeah.
She deserves
do it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. You can't help but root for her. But obviously, there's, you know, as you can see from the cover, with her partly submerged in bloody water. It's a big price to pay, but it's also really fun. And she sort of meets this kind of ragtag gang of other young people who have made similar deals. And the scenes that take place in this kind of underground world are so beautiful. It's sort of, you know, you delve down into the catacombs, and then they come into this other kind of, it's almost like a big foresty glade, where this whole other world exists, just like beneath the city of Paris. So it's really great, and I think it's going to be a series, and I'm excited to read the rest of them.
Brilliant, sounds great. This is another beautiful cover. So this is Run a Hawk by Michael Egan. It looks, just first glance, not quite as creepy as some of the other other covers that we've had, does that go for the content as well? Or is this kind of to throw you off a bit?
Now, this is one of those this is one of those books that's really tricky to talk about without giving too much away. Because it's one of those ones that I think it is best to go into it as blind as possible. So I'm going to talk very loosely about what happens. It doesn't fit as neatly into the category as the other ones in terms of content. It's sort of it's a little bit spooky, a little bit supernatural, but there's also some sci-fi elements, there's some kind of dystopian elements. But for the first, that doesn't sort of become apparent straight away. What does become apparent straight away is that something isn't right.
Okay.
So the opening kind of pages, immediately you get this sense of, oh, this is weird.
You feel unsettled.
Yes, in a very kind of dreamlike way, in a very kind of atmospheric and understated kind of way. It's very similar to Never Let Me Go. It has some elements of that, but not the same plot twist. I'm not spoiling anything. But that kind of sense of when you're first reading it, you're like, oh, this seems really like our world. It seems normal, but there's something going on that just isn't right.
Okay.
And you're sort of trying to figure it out along with the main character as he sort of tries to make sense of what is different in the world around him. Why is he feeling so out of place? Why does the universe just feel a little bit off kilter? And you sort of learn along with him the twists and the turns, and it's really great. It's one of those ones that sort of stays with you after you've read it. You're sort of thinking about it for a few days and trying to sort of puzzle it out and see how you feel about it. But yeah, very understated in the style of sort of Kevin Brooks, but with elements of, again, very difficult to talk too much about it without giving it away. But I would say if you read the first chapter, if it's the sort of thing you'll like, it will draw you in.
Okay.
That first chapter will get you.
Yeah.
And you'll want to figure out sort of what is going on and where the story goes.
So that's actually all of our books for Creature Feature. So I wanted to ask you if you have any other recommendations for anyone who likes this genre. Now, you mentioned Never Let Me Go, which is by Kazuo Ishiguro.
Yeah.
An incredible book. I actually studied it at A-level and I read it multiple times because of that. Have you got any other recommendations?
Yeah, so similar to Runner Hook would be Unwind by, I want to say, Neil Shusterman.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, one that's popped into my head is Bite Risk by S.J. Wills.
Oh, we love Bite Risk.
So Bite Risk is, again, I don't really want to spoil it, but if you like this kind of stuff, you'll definitely like that because it's got so many elements of the supernatural and also kind of sci-fi components as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few other. There's Let's Play Murder by Cassia Lupo, which was another one that was on our cover story list. It's quite similar to Getting Away with Murder in terms that it sort of involves a bit of sci-fi and it involves a bit of kind of computer game elements, so that's really fun. 16 Souls by Rosie Talbot, set in York, around the kind of all the ghosty happenings in York, so that's a really fun supernatural and with bits of romance and about a kid who can see ghosts. The Coldest Touch by Isabel Sterling is another one that's kind of involves supernatural elements but with a strong footing in kind of romance and things like that. So that's another recommendation.
Brilliant. So we've got quite a few there. I have to say I probably won't be reading all of them because I don't like a creepy story.
No.
I'm not a fan of horror. Give me a happy romance where everyone at the end is like, woo! Rather than
some romance
everyone's
in amongst the bloodshed.
Yes, I don't know. It's so interesting to hear about a genre that is, as you can probably tell, not my cup of tea at all. But we will have a new video coming out fairly soon with a different genre, new genre, and 5 more books for you to sink your teeth into. Thank you so much for watching.